Recording in progress. This is your favorite thing you like to hear, recording in progress. And at that point, you know that we are beginning. So today's topic includes two items. Number one, 12 birthday celebrations. And the second one is Jacob and genetics. If any of you have any kids or grandkids or younger siblings, you'll know that when it's a birthday season, they like everyone to remember it's their birthday. And my 5-year-old daughter's already asking, my 4-year-old daughter's already asking me when her 5th birthday is. And she feels like she's 5 every week, how many sleeps it is when it's not till March. Hanukkah's, you're right, Hanukkah's coming. And that's definitely cause for presents as well. So we'd like to, we read and we know that Jacob has 12 boys, of who become the 12 tribes of Israel. And we obviously know that they are that they're given birth at some point, but do we know when they are born? Do we know when there would be a party in the house of Jacob, a birthday party? So that's number one we're going to discuss. And the second one we're going to look at is the phenomenal experience that we read of quite at length today into this week's Torah portion of Laban, the father-in-law of Jacob, giving him a really hard deal in the profits of the farming that he's done, mainly for Laban, but for himself too. And Yaakov somehow or another is able to, as they say in Yiddish, finagle. It's not really a good translation in English, but he manages to produce the result in his favor and we'll see how he comes to do that. Before we go into the 12 sons, I thought it would be appropriate for us just to recap the timeline of where we are holding in the lives of the forefathers. By one point of reminder, as we did in our first class, Bereshis and Noach represents humanity and the universe and it's in its early stages in general. Lech Lecha is when it becomes the Jewish people's story with Abraham. So from Lech Lecha until Vayetze, and I will remind you, if you follow all the dates, there is a period of time where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are all alive. We said last week that Abraham's death was brought 5 years prematurely, so he wouldn't see Esau's bad behavior, which means he was alive during the same time. So there's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are all living at the same time. 2023 is when Abraham leaves Haran for Israel. Remember, he was born in 1948, the timeline, top of page 1. 2034, Hagar gives birth to Ishmael. It's 10 years after 10 years after Abraham and Sarah have lived in the land of Canaan, then eventually to be the land of Israel, where they're unable to have children. After 10 years is when a person can start considering having another wife. And that's where Hagar comes in. We're not going into that topic. 2047. Reminder, if you're following online, I've put the source sheet in the chat. 2047, Abraham circumcised at 99. Ishmael is 13. And him and Sarah, his wife, have their name changed. Then we go to Vayera. We had the 3 angels. Etiquette is what we conversed about at the beginning. We have the birth of Isaac a year later. Ishmael is sent away. Terach, Abraham's father, dies. And the Akedah Yitzchak, which we also spoke about, were the 10 tests of Isaac, the 10 tests of Abraham. Then we went on to Chaye Sarah, which was Sarah passes away at the beginning. And we spoke about Kiryat Arba, the burial place in Hebron. Then Lot dies and Eliezer finds Rivka for Isaac. And then we went on to the incorrect and the correct prayers, when it's okay to ask for things. And we gave some fascinating stories on that subject. And then Vayetze, which is this week's Torah portion. And the end of last week.
Can I ask what the word means?
What the?
Vayetze.
The word Vayetze, very good. Vayetze literally means from the word say. That's the source of the word in Hebrew. Do you know what that means? Say achutza. Go out. Say means to go. He left. Vayetze Yaakov me Beersheva vayelech Harana. Jacob leaves Beersheva and he goes to Haran.
So it's almost the opposite of Yeshuv.
Very good. Rotza v'shuv exactly is the exact opposite. service to come back. And that's what actually Jacob asks for on his prayers, on his journey. He says, I want to come back to my father's home. And he uses the word shav.
Didn't work out so well for him initially.
He did okay, Jacob. Of all the forefathers, he's very successful. The beginning is difficult. He doesn't, when he takes the blessings, he doesn't leave immediately to Haran. There's a 14-year gap where he goes to study. Then he leaves his studies and travels in the year 2185, which is the opening of this week's Torah portion.
Sorry. What was he self-teaching?
So very good. He wasn't self-teaching. He was studying in the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. And we discussed it briefly when we spoke about the Abraham's journey to finding the one God, and we spoke about there being many other leaders through history that were aware of one God. We're talking about up until Abraham's time, and each one of them had their own unique sort of exposure to certain things. And Shem and Ever were the most saintly of them, and they were running a yeshiva. Literally, they were teaching the works that they knew. So they were going for a long time, and Jacob hangs out there for some time. Then he meets his bride to be, Rachel, by the well, and he has a deal with Laban to work for 7 years to marry Rachel. He's tricked and he marries Leah, and then he marries Rachel, and then he has to work for another 7 years for that, and then eventually he runs away. That's the end of this week's Torah portion, where he runs away from his father-in-law, Laban. Back. And that's the beginning of next week, Vayishlach, where his return home comes at the cost of meeting Esau. And that's the beginning of next week's portion. But a lot goes on in this week's Torah portion. Firstly, the birth of the 12 sons. Well, actually, only 11 of the sons are born in this week's Torah portion, because Benjamin is born next week. There is a gap between Joseph and Benjamin, and we'll see exactly how much of a gap that is.
To one of the 12, or not really?
Very good question. No, do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Which tribes can we trace to?
Oh. Yehuda? No,
Yeah.
Levi.
Levi, Yehuda,
Yehuda,
and some Benjamin, I think. Yeah.
Only those.
So those are basically the only two tribes that we're able to.
So-
But there's something called the 10 lost tribes, which one day we'll have a.
I saw
something.
somebody on like a YouTube thing, a black man who was being interviewed in Israel, by another man who was from Nigeria.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm from the tribe, I can trace my...
Manasseh.
But he wasn't a Falashi, he wasn't from...
No, Manasseh.
Manasseh.
Yeah, some of them say, I think they're in Indian, some say they're from Manasseh.
Some just came, 1,200 Indian Jews
Yeah.
just
came.
made Aliyah. I think I read that.
So next year, or maybe, because it's not on this topic, but next year we will do a session on the 10 lost tribes and the story of Sambatyon River. The Sambatyon River is where the mystery of the 10 lost tribes are behind the Sambatyon River. And apparently there's rocks flying down by that river, which make it impossible for people to get across. And the only time it stops is just before Shabbos. But that's another topic. That's not for today. Let's focus on today's. So the 12 sons are born. Source 2 on page 1. Reuben, he's the oldest. And we know this. We know how Leah is feeling after Jacob marries Rachel, and he loves Rachel more than he loves Leah. And Leah is very happy when she is the first to conceive and have a child, and she calls the son Reuven. See, from the word Reu, to see that Hashem has seen that she's been not so graciously treated in the relationship, and now she is given a son, and her husband will love her.
Completely, which probably everybody else didn't know, that all the kids weren't from the same mother.
No, there were 4.
There were 4 wives.
Really?
Yeah. So when we don't actually have the verses here.
How
I
do you
didn't
afford
realize
it then?
both married to both of
So
them.
there used to be the custom was in those days that first of all you could have multiple wives.
Yes.
And also they would often give a concubine, an assistant, or a concubine as well. But Leah and Rachel were both given by their father's helpers, and they gave their helpers as concubines to
So So the historical question is, why did the rabbis do away with polygamy? I have my own theory about that.
We'll keep that title for another one too.
I think
Okay,
it's called fear.
Well, and well, also the legalities of the country trump
Yes.
that as well. The law doesn't allow. Then we have Shimon, who's born next. Then we have Levi. I've printed these verses at this point. We're not going to go through all of them, but you can read them and see why they were given the names that they were given. Shimon, because he's heard. Levi, because once you have three children, her husband's going to be, like the word Leviah, going to be attached to him, always with her. Judah is the thankfulness.
No,
That-
it's funny that Judah, who is the forefather of King David, is from Leah, who they say is the bride for the world to come. Whereas
So that's a famous argument of the Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. Correct, Mitch.
just
Yeah. Then, and that does become the big debate, the big argument between, well, the big face-off, as it were, between Joseph and David.
So did he have a favorite wife?
Yeah, Rachel. That's what we said. That
Yes,
was,
but
yeah.
I mean, even after Leah's giving him all these sons.
Well, even though Leah's giving all the sons, and Rachel is still his. When Joseph is born, he's very happy that he has.
see today, what you say is when you get married, you marry your Rachel and your Leah. It's the same woman. It's
Got it all in one.
it's a wife for this world. and the
So
world to come.
Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda are all born to Leah. Then Rachel gives her maidservant Zilpah as a wife, since she's unable to have children. And then Dan and Naphtali are born
To Rachel.
to Rachel's concubine, whose name is Zilpah. Then Leah does the same thing. She gives her maidservant as concubine and has another two, which is Gadanash. Then comes, sorry, I did the wrong order. I did it wrong. Dan and Naphtali are, no, that's right, or Bilhah, and Gad and Asher from Zilpah. Then
Thanksgiving must have been a real ruckus in those days.
must have been a busy house. And we'll see actually that according to one opinion, they're all born within 7 years. So you can imagine what's going on there. But you'll see soon on the birthdays how busy it gets. Then Leah has two more children, Yisachar and Zevulun. She gets pregnant again. According to some people, she gets pregnant again. According to some people, she's pregnant with twins. With Zevulun, Evan Israel brings that she's twins. And one of them becomes Dinah, the girl, where she prays that she shouldn't have another boy, because if she was to have another boy, that means she would have 7 of the 12 tribes, which means it would only leave one more for her sister Rachel. And she didn't want her sister to have less than the concubines. She should have at least had 2, which leaves the last 2, Yosef and Binyamin, that are born to Rachel. How does that sound?
Busy.
Busy, very busy. So now that we've given you the 12 sons and who they are born and who they're born from, what we're going to now do is try and get some clarity as to who is born and what date they are born. Just to say that the Torah chooses what dates it wants to give us. It tells us the days of when the Jewish people camp. And it doesn't have the names of the months as we have them today, because the names of the months in Hebrew, or they're called Hebrew as we have them today, were taken when the Jews came out of Bavel. In the Torah, it is called Chodesh HaRishon, Chodesh HaSheni. In the first month, the 13th day of the third month, the 14th day of, and those dates that we know when they take place in the Torah are called what are given by a number of a month. Now, there are two countings of the year that we have. We have the beginning of the year, which is in on Rosh Hashanah, but that's not the beginning of the months of the year, which can be confusing. The 1st of January is the first month of the year. In Judaism, Nisan is the first month from the counting, but the first month of the year is the first day of the year, sorry, is Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah. So it can get confusing. In fact, the sages actually debate certain phenomena that took place in the Torah. Was it in Nisan or was it in Tishrei? Noah's flood is an example. The reason why that's important is because the dates that I'm about to give you, that we're about to read, are Hebrew dates that came, Hebrew months, sorry, that came long after the 12 tribes were actually born. And in this book, which I'm holding here, and we'll talk about some of the sources soon, he goes so far as to give the English date when they were born. Now, remember,
The English equivalent.
the English equivalent. But how on earth he's able to come to that conclusion is very perplexing because it didn't start yet. So here's an example. Reuben was born on the 14th of Kislev, 2193, as we'll see on our map. And he's got in brackets here, November 25th, 1569, before the Common Era. That's what they put in this book. They're giving you his English birthday, which is extraordinary on so many levels, because we have a challenge enough to give you the Hebrew birthday, and I get people calling me that their kid's having a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. How do we know the Hebrew what the Hebrew birthday is? And somehow or other, this guy's not only been giving us the Hebrew birthday in the Mem lawyers, he's even telling us the English equivalent. And I think that is quite phenomenal. So just recap what we've done so far. Leah has her boys. Rachel gives Bilhah, her maidservant, to have her first two boys. Leah gives Zilpah her maidservant, and they have two more. Leah has two more, and then Rachel has her two. So that's the 12. 4, 2, 2, 2, 2. Out of those, 6 went to Leah, 2, the concubine of Leah, Zilpah, 2 to the concubine via Rachel of Bilhah, and 2 to Rachel. Excellent. Yeah.
Did Rachel actually die giving birth to
Very good. Rachel gave 2, even though officially we know the date that Rachel passes away, because she passes away while she's giving birth eventually. And up until the modern era, unfortunately, giving birth was a real risk. And a lot of people died of childbirth. And thank God, in today the medicine, miracle of medicine, and that has all changed.
Then why does it say like she named him Benoni? Like,
The son of my she wasn't easy for her, but the name that he is kept is the name that Joseph gives.
But
That Jacob gives of Binyamin.
Onimi.
she gave
Affliction.
like she gave the name before she gave birth, or
No, while she was giving birth, she didn't necessarily die immediately. The complication may have been after. It doesn't say exactly what the complication was.
And what's the difference between like Benoni and Benjamin?
Benjamin means the son of my right hand. Benoni means the son of the affliction and the hardship. I just want to see how he translates it in here. 35:18.
You're not using Saxons.
I should be using the new one that we have. But the verse even says clearly, "Vayhi b'tzeit nafsha," and it was when she breathed her last breath, for she was dying. She named her newborn son Benoni, the son of my sorrow. But Jacob called him Binyamin, son of the south, since he was the only one of his sons to have been born in Canaan, south of Padan Aram. So there we have the answer to your question.
Oh wait, so where was Jude was born when he was still in exile?
All of them were born while he was with Laban,
Right.
except for Binyamin. Source 3. It is clear, this is Ibn Isra's commentary on the Torah. It is clear from scripture that Jacob's 12 children were born in 7 years. When the ancient numbered them, they could only explain how this was possible by saying that each one was born 6 months and some days after conception, because they couldn't figure out how you could have 12 kids during that time. However, this was not necessarily so. It is possible that Leah gave her handmaiden to Jacob before Naphtali was born, that Rachel conceived before the birth of Zebulun, and that we do not know when Dinah was born. So he doesn't know the exact order, and he's trying to figure out how it may have been that within 7 years they all would have been born.
That complicated. It's not difficult.
several
6
times
with
it-
1, that means you're having 1 a year, give or take. And then 2 and 2 and 2.
Exactly.
And 2. It's
That's
easy.
exactly what he's saying.
Yeah.
But but the question is when
I mean,
does
if you're that way,
well the question is when you're right, but if for example if they waited for each one to be born, you would have a problem. But it's follows. 4 are born to Leah and no one does any. There's no movement yet till those 4 are born. So that's a minimum of 4 years.
No, sorry. Another child could be conceived with another woman during those 4 years.
Yeah, but that's exactly what he's saying in his.
Yeah.
But no, but
He's saying that
he was only married to Rachel at this point and Leah. The other 2 weren't in the picture.
Did-
Rachel wasn't getting pregnant.
Did he?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he married them. Yeah, he married. And I mean, in Judaism, when you're with somebody, it's pretty much considered marriage. Although they could be considered concubines, which is, by the way, it's not so simple because there is a halachic definition of a concubine versus a wife, but it's not. That's for another
We're not doing this
conversation.
now.
We're not doing it now.
Thank you.
But one thing, you said a really good thing. So let's just analyze this point because this is what Ibn Ezra is telling us. 4 of them are born to Leah while he's married only to Leah and Rachel.
Yes.
So nobody else is conceiving at this point from the basic understanding of the verse. Then comes Rachel and says, okay, now she's had 4 children and I've had none. So we only have 3 years left for another 6 to be born.
How do you know she didn't say that during the first 4
Well, that's
years?
exactly what he's saying,
Okay.
that it could have been done before.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're saying. Okay, now a word on sources. Is everybody online still? Good. Okay, a word on sources 4. There are, as I've mentioned, the Torah gives us certain details of information, but lots of the details that from the Torah are given in the book called the Midrashim. And there are different Midrashim, and not only there are different Midrashim, which are texts that were written by later rabbis and later generations, there are also later rabbis, because the original Midrashim is from the 2nd century. It's from the time of the Mishnah. So it's very old, very, very old. These are a couple of 1,000 years old books. But then you have more recent books where rabbis have collected more information and built new chronological orders of what took place.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What's the official cutoff between a midrash and just a rabbinic
Very good question.
interpretation of a story or a pasuk or a question?
Very good. So the Midrash in its basic format it comes from the word drash, which means that you are a way of accessing information from verses. What? Expounding on verses. And there are how many principles?
There's more than
There's at least 13 principles of how you can expound on verses.
that.
There are more. Yeah, there's 13 that we read about.
So why are we getting like the second-rate rabbi here, not the first rate?
Everyone on Zoom wants to know what you're talking about. But the reason why I only want to briefly talk about the Midrash because we don't have time for analyzing the actual books today. And we've done a course on books, and perhaps we'll do it another time, of course. But I'm only doing it in so much as what we need for the information that we're going to glean from those books. So the rabbi's initial understanding of the verses was done in the times of the Midrash, which is the times of the Mishnah, and in the times of the Talmud, where the rabbis were debating those. After that, if you came along and you said, I want to understand this vav here and this hey there to mean that I can put tefillin on my nose instead of putting on my art, everyone would say, no, sorry, you're a very smart rabbi, Mitch, but your new way of expounding on the verses is unacceptable. But to give explanations to things, that can continue to every generation, and every rabbi in every generation will expound on verses the way they want to.
But the
In a basic.
don't always give laws. They
Exactly,
also
give stories.
They're good.
There's a lot of Agada in the Midrash, and the Agada from the Midrash is a lot of what we'll be talking about today. There are stories in the Midrash and stories in the Talmud. Some of them are factual, some of them are fantasy, and some of those fantasy style ones we read about the monsters, or some people say they might be real. But a Midrash, some bits you can take literally and some not. What's in the Torah you have to take literally.
Well, what's the cutoff?
The cutoff of the sages of the Mishnah period.
What's the cutoff for when something is legitimately considered?
Once the books were canonized, once they were made, the Mishnah has now been closed by Rabbi Yehuda Hanossi, that was it.
Okay.
Any rabbi that came after would have been a Talmud. There were some rabbis that were considered So, well, yeah, Rav Tana or Polik. There's some rabbis that lived just on the twilight between them that they could argue on the sage from the previous generation. The end of the Talmud ended. Then you had the Gaonim, the Rishonim, each time and their period. Okay, but let's go on because I want to focus on today's topic, and we're already almost half an hour in. These are sources, different midrashim. I've given you the era when they were, who the attributed author is, because sometimes we don't know who the author is, who compiled it, and roughly when, and the description of what it's about. And I've given you also the acronym of that one, because when we come to the birthdays, and also the age of the death of the 12 tribes of Israel, these books all have, or sometimes have, differing opinions on it. And as I said to you before, the Torah does not give us a lot of these details. The Torah gives us the death of one of the 12 tribes, and he was the one that apparently died last. And his name was Levi when he was 137 years old. So he lived longer than all the others. He was the oldest, and he lived the longest. That's when the official... No, he lived, so he wasn't the oldest. Reuven was oldest. He lived the longest. One of the oldest boys, and he lived the longest. So some of the countings can be done from then. So we know what happened when the Jewish people went through the different experiences they went through.
400 years is from Levi.
Well, it's less, but the official work on hard labor began when Levi had died. Joseph was one of the first to die, which is why the brothers talk about what they were concerned, what Joseph would do to them after knowing their father had died, how he might attack them, and eventually he passes away quite early. Binyamin and Yosef have the shortest of lifespans of the brothers, as we'll see. Okay, so now let's look at the birthdays. And when it says MT or YS or any of these things, it's a reference to the midrash that we've referred to before. So YS is Yalkut Shimoni, and that was put together in the 13th century. It's by Reb Shimon Ashkenazi Hadarshan. Now, just to say, we're considering that a midrash, but that's not the same kind of a level of a midrash. That's a storytelling midrash, not the same level of a midrash where they're debating the verses in the time of the 2nd century. Seder Olam Rabbah is a very, very old book, which Seder Olam literally means the order of the world, of humanity, and it's also got some often a source for some of this information. I've also used this book that I mentioned before, the Mem La'ois. This is a translation of it. It's also a 17th century work, 16th century work. I think I put the dates when it was written. Yeah, by Rabbi Yaakov Huli. He was the first author, and it's a monumental commentary with phenomenal information in. And the rabbi that put this together in the 18th century, 17th century, has a lot of, based on a lot of Agada and Halacha and Midrash, and he's the foremost author that gives us the year of the birth of each one of the 12 tribes. There's another book called Seder HaDorot, which I was going to bring, but I think I've left it at home. I was going to bring it, where it also gives a lot of detailed description of who was born when. But I was really struggling with some of the dates the years that he was giving as to the birth. So I've bought the ones from the Me'am Lo'ez here. Reuven is born on the 14th of Kislev in the year 2193. That's 1568 years before the Common Era, which means it's 3,580 something years ago. That is when Reuven is born. 14th of Kislev is next week, because today we are the 4th, in 10 days. So in 10 days' time would be Reuven's birthday. How old would he be if he was born in the year 2193? He'd be 3,000 something years old today. Shimon was born on the 28th of Tevet in the year 2194. So it's a month. So it's 13 months later. So you were talking before. What were you saying? You were saying that
Is it having 1 year?
So this is that was 13 months later.
Yeah.
Levi is born
Not a year.
14 months later. Nissan, 15 months later.
Yeah.
In Nissan 2195. So the first 3 kids are born in 3 years and 4 months, 3 years and 5 months. Yehuda is born Sivan 2196. It's another 13 months later.
Yeah.
But 2 months, well, one opinion is that Nisan, so it's exactly a year later, with a year minus a day.
Then you've got Dan.
But
born
then
in
Dan, same year, 2 months later. So obviously, as we said before, that means that Rachel gave Bilhah a concubine whilst
Well, her sister was pregnant.
pregnant with Yehuda.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then a year and a year and a month later, so it's 13 months later, Naphtali is born. And then a month later, Gad is born, which means Leah had given her concubine while Zilpah was pregnant.
Yeah.
Excellent. You're following beautifully. Asher, he was born in Shavat 2199, which is over a year later.
So the same concubine.
No, this is Leah. This is Leah. Sorry, the same concubine had another child. Sorry, you're right. Then, a few months earlier, Yisachar's born. Who is? Leah's.
Yeah.
Leah's fifth. Yisachar is Leah's fifth. Zevulun is Leah's sixth. A year and 4 months later, or in 5 months, depending if he's born in Av or in
The
Sivan.
year before, a few months before,
Joseph is born,
Yeah.
and Benjamin is born some years later.
Other one then, because that one's after that one.
No, it's in
No, it's a good question. Why is Yosef, and also the other one's above? Why is Asher above Yisachar?
Who's Dina's tripping?
So this is like the Real Housewives.
No, it's a good question. Why are they put in that order if they're born before? And this is where I was really struggling to get an answer to.
Didn't they each marry that?
That's another thing. No, one opinion.
What's
The order is
what's
so
going on there?
Like each of the.
According to one
tribes
opinion,
married
each tribe was born with a girl, and some say they married their sisters.
Really?
Yeah, that's another midrash. That wasn't what we're here to discuss today. Yosef is born in 2199. Yisachar is born
2198.
2198. So the issue is,
Right.
Yeah,
Tishri
this one.
below.
That
I mean,
would have
sorry,
been-
with Zebulun below.
yeah,
That one should
Yeah.
be after that.
Yeah.
one.
I know. And when I looked in all of the, and that's why I bought this title, because when I look in all of the,
Also be there.
Yeah.
yeah, when you look in the order, they don't seem to address it, and
Well, maybe it's because the dates and times are all so different there.
Or do you think
Why?
certain
How would they
wives
be
or
different?
certain
Because
women had higher
You said
status?
times and
it
dates.
could be that they had.
They were given preference on the order of things.
No, because
In that case, Joseph would definitely be above Zebulun. Because Joseph is
It's
Rachel's. Yeah.
Mhm.
What's the
I
question?
think they just grouped them by the last born child, and they concluded like that.
But it's not officially. That's not the case. I hear you, but officially, it's not the case.
What's the question?
Because if you look at the years that I bought here,
2199.
it seems like some brothers are born before, even though he's claimed to have been born later.
He was born a year before, but yeah, he's listed after Zebulun.
Oh, am I looking here? Zilpah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's also the same with Asher, should have been listed below.
So
It's dead.
that's the year of death.
So.
Lifespan. Reuben's 2193, Shimon 2194, Levi 2195, Judah 2196, Dan 2196, Naphtali 2198, Gad 2198, Asher 2199, and Yisachar's 2198.
So in that they've been wrong.
They also should have been above.
Zavulun is 2200.
Maybe that.
It's only 13 months later. Joseph is 2199.
So maybe they don't actually care about.
Age of death also is a matter of debate. As I said, Levi, everyone says it was 137, but how old the other ones were of argument.
I think I know what's happening. I think they're trying to put the ones from the same mother together.
Mm.
Right.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Except Leah's 2 should have been listed under her.
Because Noah
Yeah.
said this, I will now.
But then be on top of them.
Under Yehuda.
But it
So
makes
each
sense.
woman is grouped in with their own.
Yeah,
kids.
except for two of them, which are like
Separated from.
So
from the other two.
the Torah lists the order. The Torah lists the order of the tribes in 15 places. All 15 places are listed in a different order each time. There's the order of the birth, order of the camp, princes of inheritance, going down to Egypt, blessing of Jacob, order of the journeys, blessings of Moses, tribes and their blessings and curses, and each time it's a different order.
Okay.
The order of the birth is, however, the way it's brought in this week's portion, and which is the following order: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yisachar, Zevulun, Yosef, and Binyamin. Which one we got here, but the dates don't all align. And that's why
the dates don't
the date, because they look at the years. The years don't all align. And that's why I've been struggling to get the answer.
That's why.
It's in the year order.
It's not in the order of who was the mother.
No, it's not.
It is.
Next,
That's why
then you've
when I
got
named
them
you up to
separated.
Oh, here it's in the order of the mother. Correct. Sorry. Yes, you're right. It's the order of the mother. You're right. It's in the order of the mother, not in the order of the birth. That's what it is. It's the order of the mother. Must be.
But you've got, except you've got Leah separated.
No,
You haven't got her 6.
That's the order.
Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, then you should have
It's
Yisachar
correct,
and Zebulun.
Zebulun.
No.
Yes.
Yes,
It's
it's
very
right.
similar.
Yeah, but the 4 in between are not the concubines.
Is Yisachar Zebulun with Levi and Yehuda?
I don't know.
It's the and Zebulun.
This is why the title of the class was try and figure out whose birthday it is when in the house of Levi. And it's not Jacob, and it's not simple. And I've given you what the sages have brought. You can try and figure out how it what makes sense of the order of the birth, but of who's born when. But there is definitely the concept here of them being put in the order of their mothers. And as the Ibn Ezra said, what did the Ibn Ezra say? It's possible that Leah gave a handmaiden to Jacob before Naphtali, who was the second one of Bilhah, was born. So therefore she's conceived, she's pregnant early, but it's still, he's born after. Doesn't mean he's born before.
It's 5222.
But no, 4, yeah,
Four.
5, 2, 2, 2, no,
Isn't it
4,
4,
4, 2, 2, 2,
2?
2.
So fine.
No, 4 of Leah, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda.
Then 2 of the what's the name? Bill. What's the name? Bill.
No, Dan is also. Yeah, Dan and Naphtali are Bilhah.
Oh.
Gad and Asher are Zilpah. Yisachar, Zevulun are
Okay.
Leah. Yosef and Binyamin are. All right. Let's look now at the next chart on the bottom of page 2. The year that they're born and what order are they? So Reuven is first, 2193. Shimon is second, 2194. Levi is third, 2195. No complications yet. Yehuda is fourth, 2196. Dan is fifth, 2196. No one is in 2197 because they're both born towards the end of the year. Elul and Av. So the Jewish year again is counted from Rosh Hashanah. So the next year begins in Tishrei. 2197 on 2198 we've got 7 is Gad, sorry, Naphtali, then Gad, then we've got Asher on the list, even though Yisachar's born in 2198, which is where we're confused. Then we've got a 10 is Zevulun, even though it seems like Yosef is born before, and Binyamin is 12. So it is confusing, and that's what I expected it to be, nothing less. So there we have the 12 birthdays, and it is already 2042, and we have a much more another great subject to get into. But in synopsis, 12 sons are born, 6 to Leah, 2 to Bilhah, to Zilpah, 2 to Bilhah, and 2 to Rachel. And Rachel's second son is born much later, and she passes away a couple of years later, and she passes away at his birth. And these are the 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. I will add, and we'll talk about it perhaps in another week, the 12 tribes of Israel are actually not these 12. Because Levi, they are the 12 tribes of Israel, but the 12 tribes of how Israel is divided is not these 12 tribes. And that is because Levi gets separated
And Joseph has two.
and Joseph has two kids,
And they,
Manasseh and Ephraim, and they both become their own tribe heads.
and then Joseph gets.
And Joseph gets sidelined, and you get Manasseh and Ephraim, which are the descendants of Joseph, and they get their own territory. Each one of them become princes of their own tribe, and Levi becomes the priests, so they don't get counted within the rest of the tribes and don't get land, the Kohanim and the Levites both. But that's another point. Now let's go on to the second element of the class on page 3, and that is Jacob and genetics. Now, while we called it Jacob and genetics, it is actually mostly epigenetics. Genetics are the DNA of every human being. That's the genes that we get from our parents, who got from their parents. And each parent gives us one gene of that type. Of course, the most common one that everyone knows is the brown and the blue eyes, and the brown eyes is much more of a stronger gene. Nevertheless, Kanai of my 7 children, 6 of them have blue eyes, like their mum. I think 6, yeah? Some of them have slightly browner inside, but some of them have really dark blue eyes. So for whatever happened there, the genetics can be stronger, clearly. I don't know how it operates. But the point is that, and we're not here to discuss the actual biology of the DNA, we're looking at what the Torah tells us of it. And what the Torah seems to tell us about genetics, at least from this point of view, is epigenetics. And that is, as we've written here in the small italics, it is not the DNA, rather behaviors that can influence the DNA. This concept is becoming more studied today than it was in the past. And the Time magazine had a feature on epigenetics, where it says, and this is the headline, and here's a picture of it, why your DNA isn't your destiny. The new science of epigenetic trends and how the choices you make can change, and also the change of yourself and changes within your kids. And epigenetics is not the DNA, but it's influencing it. Meditating may help change something in a child. That's what they're trying to figure out, even though the nature and usually one would think nature is everything, but potentially nurture can have an influence.
Definitely agree with that.
You would agree with that. Well, the Torah seems to agree with it, but at a bit of an extreme. Let's read 4 hilarious stories of epigenetics as they appear in the Torah. Most of them are in reference to impregnating. One is with a red heifer, how to make a red heifer. One is from this week's Torah portion, and 3 are stories of people that had strange pregnancies and delivery, and they blamed it on epigenetics. The Talmud relates, source A of 1 on page 3. There is a custom, or a mitzvah rather, in Jewish law that a woman goes to the mikveh after she's counted clean days from the ending of her period. At that point, when they go to mikveh, is a mitzvah for a husband and wife to be together, and to the extent that it also is an opportune time of getting pregnant as well. So this rabbi went, his name was Rabbi Yochanan. He was a very beautiful rabbi, very handsome, and he was also extremely holy and bright Torah scholar. He was accustomed to go and sit at the gates of the women's immersion sites. Rabbi Yochanan, who was known for his extraordinary good looks, explained and said, when the daughters of Israel emerge from their immersion, they will look at me and have children as beautiful as I. The sages say that it wasn't just his looks that he was trying to promote here, but it was knowledge of Torah. Either way, it's an epigenetic attempt. That by seeing him, that will influence what child is going to be born. I mean, how would that influence you going to have a good-looking child because you saw the rabbi, a handsome rabbi on the way out?
I don't think you want to answer that one.
I'm just reading the Talmud. Number B, the Gemara discusses the revised version of Rabbi Eliezer's statement. The master said above, Jews were safeguarding the red heifer from the time that it was conceived. In fact, it was a mitzvah. You had to make sure that the red heifer didn't come in touch with impurities and wasn't used to plow. You know what the red heifer is? It's an entirely red
Cow.
cow that is used to purify, and it can't even have two hairs that are black.
Right, and it can never have worked.
They're
Could never have
trying-
worked.
They're trying to
They
Yeah.
genetically engineer one so they could do sacrifices again.
Really? Who's from
That's
Israel?
Yeah.
in
Well,
Israel.
in fact, they had one was born in Israel as well, even without re-edit if they did it. Died already? Oh, right. But so the rabbis say, how could you have
What did they do
safeguarded?
with-
How could you have safeguarded this animal from day one that his mother conceived? So what it says, Rav Kahana says they would pass a red cup before her while the male mounts her, an act that would cause the offspring to be red. So another epigenetic story in the Talmud. Remember I told you what this point of this class is to read the Torah and what it says
These
about it.
guys are a little weak on their biology.
Number C. The Gemara relates that initially the noblemen of Rome would keep an image imprinted on a seal by their beds and engage in intercourse opposite that image, so that they would beget children of similar beauty. From this point forward, from the time of the Great Revolt, and they kidnapped the Jewish children, they forcefully tied their foot to the beds and engaged in intercourse across them because they were so handsome. So another story. We've had one with the red heifer and two with... The D is the most hilarious. Let's go to the three dots in the middle of D. There was an incident involving an Ethiopian man who married an Ethiopian woman and fathered a white son from her.
So
The,
she,
fa-
so she says. That's a story. And she,
the father seized the child and came to the rabbi. He said to him, "Is he perhaps not my child?" He said to him, "Do you have portraits in your house?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Are they black or white?" He said, "They're white. It's from him that you had a white son. From there that you had the white son, not portraits of a boyfriend. Portrait of..."
that's also known as shallow bias.
Skip a generation.
Yeah,
I can strip a few
Right.
generations.
Either way, these are all cases of where the rabbis seem to be going quite extreme in their ability to epigenetic of how things are influencing what's going on around them. But if you notice, I skipped something. I skipped the most important part of Bereshit Rabbah 73:10. What is that? Jacob took for himself rods of fresh poplar and almond and plane. He peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white that was in the rods. Why did he do this? That is what our patriarch Jacob would do. He would place the rods in the water troughs, and an animal would come and drink. He would see the rods and recoil backwards. The male would copulate with it, and it would bear an offspring like that.
Therefore, that Jacob would have them.
That's how Jacob had them. So he put these things in the water. According to, I read as I was preparing, a rabbi who was quoted in the past. I can find the paper. His name was Dr. Gerald Schroeder, The Genesis and the Big Bang. He says that the sticks were strictly placed in front of the sheep to startle them backwards, increasing the rate of intercourse between the sheep. He too asserts that the speckles on the rod did not contribute to the birth of speckled sheep. Rather, it prompted, they got a shock from it and went backwards and copulated as a result. Rashi says no, it was through the vision of this shapes and designs on it that was influencing the sheep that Jacob had. What is all this talking about?
You sound like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his vaccine issues.
Exactly. So, for the last few minutes that we have, I'd like to refer to source 2. And I've taken it from the Kahat Chumash, that's this Chumash here, because this Chumash, what it's done is it's interpolated in the text, lots of explanations to explain what the context of what is going on. Of course, when you read the verse, you read it in this basic translation. Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. The beginning, God created heaven and earth. But what they do here, on that verse, just as an example, they don't just translate it in its basic, They say on the first day of creation, in the beginning of God's creation, ex nihilo, of heaven and everything in it, and earth and everything in it. That's not the translation of in that Bereshit bara Elokim Hashemayim, but they explain it for you in greater context, and they bring you more details from the different explanations of the Torah. In text 2, on the bottom of page 3, is the story of Laban and Jacob, and the incredible miracle of how Jacob is able to outsmart his father-in-law Laban on the bottom of page 3. And even though Laban was trying to give him sheep that were weaker, with completely white, and therefore making the odds of him having sheep with shapes on, which was the deal that he made with his father-in-law, that he would take the ones with the shapes on. Nevertheless, he was miraculously able to produce many sheep with designs on that became his. And that is what he was doing with this stick in the trough, apparently, to gain a epigenetics strong.
So bad about
Great.
the sheep that had the blotchy fur.
Nothing had of them, but there was just much less. There were much. If you go to the farm or you drive past, you see white sheep all over.
Oh, right, there's less.
There's less with little shapes. So it was becoming much less likely. And not only that, Laban gives him more white sheep, because the more he has that are white, Laban gets. He's only going to keep the sheep with the blotches on from the news as well. So his likeliness of getting anything would seem very low. But he's able to genetically influence it with his magic or knowledge, and more importantly, with God's blessing. And I think it's mostly with God's blessing. I don't think we're going to have time to read the whole thing, but let's start it at least now. In the year 2199, the 14th year that Jacob had agreed to work for Laban in exchange for Rachel and Leah were up. Bottom of page 3. At the same time, Rebekah's wet nurse Deborah arrived in Paddan Aram, sent by Rebekah to inform Jacob that Esau's hatred toward him had abated to the extent that it was now safe for him to return to Canaan. This is all commentary. The verse hasn't started yet. Jacob therefore began to think about returning to Canaan, but despite his mother's reassurances, he was afraid to risk a confrontation with his his brother that really hated him. But, and this is when the verse starts, the bold. When Rachel gave birth to Joseph that same year, Jacob sensed that God would protect him from Esau in the merit of his newborn son, unique spiritual qualities. Then Jacob felt confident enough to undertake the journey home. And he said to Laban, going back to the verse, you can see the bold is the verse, send me on my way and I will go to my home and to my land. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and I will go, for you know that I worked during the time I worked for you, I completely fulfilled the terms of my contract. Laban said to him, if only I would find favor in your eyes and you would stay. I have learned by divination, we spoke about that the other week, whether you're allowed to practice that it is on your account that God blessed me with sons. Until your arrival, I only had daughters. Fifth reading. But Jacob had no plans to stay. So Laban then said to him, specify your payment due from me, and I will pay you accordingly. So Jacob said to him, you know very well how faithfully I have toiled for you, and just how few were the livestock that you placed with me to herd when I first began to work for you. For the little you had before my arrival has increased substantially, and God has blessed you on my account. Until now I have worked solely for you and for your benefit, leaving my sons to work for their own subsistence. But now if I continue to work only for your benefit, when will I have a chance to provide for my own household as well? I now need to help my sons because they cannot put aside anything for the future from the little they produce by themselves. Laban asked, so what shall I give you? Jacob said, do not give me anything outright. If you will do this one thing for me, I will continue to pasture your flocks and to tend to them. As you know, the majority of goats are solid black or brown, while the minority have some white markings on them. These white markings come in 4 varieties: speckles, blotches, ankle rings, and belts. And you also know the majority of sheep are solid white, while the minority are black or brown, with or without white markings. I propose that you let me take some of the goats and sheep born from now on that are in the minority, i.e. the goats that are born white speckled or white blotched, and the sheep that are born solid brown or black because they're not white. I want you to feel comfortable with this arrangement. Therefore, in order to allay any suspicion on your part that I am expropriating any of these types of goat. What's that word mean?
Expropriate before she.
Yeah, any of too much. Beginning of the line, halfway under the image. 4 lines under the image.
Expropriating means to
Appropriating, taking without, stealing. Any of these types of goats and sheep that are already in the flock. And B, to minimize the probability that the offspring of the flock born from now on will be these type. Let me pass with you through all your flocks today. Remove from there any white speckled or white blotched he goats. So in other words, the ones that are likely to make this, and every solid black or brown lamb and every white blotched or speckled. Segregate these irregular types of sheep and goats and give them over into the care of your sons. The remainder of the flock, which I will tell you, will include all the regular animals, plus the white ankle ringed and the white belted goats and the black or brown sheep with any markings. And it goes through it. That's now.
Did human
Three-
hair color have any significance?
What's
or
that?
Human hair color, like of their children, did they have any, like, did they have a full variety, or did
Oh,
they?
you mean did they have ginger kids and that? And blue haired and the black. Well, we only know Esau that he was a redhead. 3 lines for the bottom of page 4. But Laban also knew that Jacob could produce animals colored or marked differently from their parents by having the parents look to other animals or different colorings or marking while mating. This Laban understood was why Jacob wanted to keep some of the white marked goats and sheep for himself. Aware of this, Laban tried to further tip the odds in his favor. On that day, Laban also removed the he goats and the white ankled goats, which Jacob had not mentioned in this proposal. In addition to all the white speckled and the white blotched he goats and all the white speckled and the white blotched she goats, which Jacob had mentioned, in order to make it impossible for Jacob to have his female goats look at them while mating and thereby produce offspring with white markings. In order to make it even harder to produce goats with white markings, Laban removed all the black and brown sheep. In other words, he did everything to make the statistics of what they considered the genetic way of genetically producing them from him. Finally, let's do finally, the middle of the page. In order to further decrease the number of newly born animals that would belong to Jacob, Laban also removed all the reverse goats and sheep that he felt. In other words, even the ones that could give birth, he took the good ones. He left all the aforementioned and took in charge of his sons. Only the weak or the sterile goats without white markings were left. And then, magically...
Is this considered a miracle, or is this?
Yeah, it must be a miracle. In fact, it's definitely a miracle. If you continue to read, it says that those angels came at night and took the flock from Jacob and brought them into Laban's territory for the mating. So there's clearly stuff that went on as well. But what we do see over here is that the Torah is going in depth of something, of some sort of genetic coding of some sort. Well, not at all. Some of it seems to be miraculous. I mean, the story of the black couple from Ethiopia and their white child as a part of that, and the suggestion that the rods with their things, it was influencing it. It's quite it's quite extreme.
Even Esau as a redhead, it would be odd for twins.
One to be red and one not to.
Colored.
Yeah. Well, they don't have to be identical teams. Not all twins are identical twins. But
different hair colors is
the reason why it could be the potential of the interesting. The reality is that each goat and each sheep had the genes to be able to produce these things. The question is the likeliness of it, just like the blue eyes and the brown eyes element.
Days, because if you think, or was there just a mix of people? Because most people,
We're talking about the animals or the people.
if you think, like, say, in Egyptian times, they're only shown as with dark hair. I'm not sure if saying that was true or false. And so how come that the Jewish people had multicolored hair, whereas everyone else seemed to be just...
What do you mean? Well, the Jews from Taiman aren't blonde. The Jews from Morocco aren't blonde and blue eyes. The Jews from Europe are.
So different. We had lots of different types, whereas other races seem to only be one color.
Well,
yeah, because the Jews have been in exile for 2,000 years.
The Vikings came down the rivers in Russia,
and also people have married people that have converted.
So they're all pillaging by Cossacks, probably got
right.
a little bit of blue eyes in there.
I always wanted to be part Viking.
But I mean, if there's Syrians, not Jewish Syrians, who are quite fair.
Yeah, you do see that. Yeah, you do see that. You do see. I mean, even in Gaza, you see some very very footage when very dark. But let's just conclude here before we get carried away, and it is 9 o'clock. In conclusion, the epigenetic revolution is being highlighted by some scientists, but we're not here to discuss biology because I know very little about biology. What we do know is we know the Torah, and I attempted to bring to you some stories from the Torah where it seem to be having some influence on the outcome of birth and children from this phenomena of what they're seeing and how that might be influencing them. And in an age when your DNA isn't your destiny, perhaps Jacob was already performing that, but he certainly had God's blessing to help. And it was Hashem that gave all of the blessings that we have. And we have the 12 tribes, the confusion of when they are born and the year in which they are born, but somewhat of an order. And there we have the goats and sheep as Jacob. Please, yeah.
One thought.
Of course.
The Rabbi Soloveitchik says the Jewish people are people of destiny, not fate.
Not
Not fate,
Mm.
right.
which separates.
Yeah.
It's a distinction he's making between, let's say, a pagan religion and an ethical monotheism. So I would just try and my only point was we may be partially determined by our genetics, but we still have a spiritual destiny. With
Mm.
Rabbi Soloveitchik's
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. It fits into that.
I think it's incredible they're talking about genetics. They
Fine.
don't know anything
Well,
about
they have
anything.
Next week, if Vayishlach, we'll talk about Jacob's thigh and filet mignon steak, and the exaggerated episode of Bilhah's bed. The exaggerated episode of Bilhah's bed.
Sorry?
Any questions from anyone online? All right, that was a different class. Each week they've got a complete different feel to them.
Next week.
What's that?
I don't buy it.
23